I was in the car after my show yesterday listening to Don and Han. And I kept hearing people call, I mean, can't the Mets stretch it a little bit? You know, he's a homegrown guy. Don't they owe it to him? And the more I heard people call in and say that, the more perplexed I got. Doesn't that loyalty go both ways? Didn't the Mets, when Billy Epler was a GM, offer him 7 years at 158? Didn't they? Why couldn't he have stretched it? If he loved the Mets so much, and I think he does, why couldn't he stretch it? Now, I know what your answer is going to be. You're more than welcome to answer this, but I'll rebut it. Well, it's a business. This is how he earns his money. It's a business for the Mets, too. And what I think is happening with Met fans is that they know their owner is fabulously rich. At last count, $20 to $22 billion personal wealth. Outstanding. Really something else. And they think that money is no object. But when you're running a business, you set tabs. You set limits. This is what we're going to give somebody. This is what we think he's worth. This is what we'll push it to. So who made the mistake here? The Mets or Pete Alonso? 7 years, 158. So he didn't take that. And then last year he made 20. So essentially, in order for him to make up what he turned down, he'd have to get 6 years, 138. And the Mets are not doing that. Now, if the Blue Jays want to do it, God bless them. And you know why the Blue Jays might do it? And you know why Scott Boras usually succeeds in these endeavors? There's always a team and there's always an owner that's desperate. The Blue Jays are desperate. They can't get anybody to take their money. Anybody. Corbin Burns, no. Couldn't do it. Soto, no. Wouldn't do it. And I've heard from very connected people that the Blue Jays were willing to pay anything to get Soto. They were willing to top the Mets offer. Players would prefer not to play where they have to cross customs every single road trip. I know that sounds like so insignificant for the average person. So what, going through customs? It's a pain. It's a pain. And when you have to do it every single road trip, in and out, it's a lot. It adds hours upon hours each time to your trip. And then there's the difference in the money. Toronto's a great city. I love Toronto. It's one of my favorite cities, very cosmopolitan. It's like America with a European feel to it, if that makes sense. It's terrific. It's clean. It's bustling. The stadium is great. They poured $400 million into that stadium. And no one wants to play there. So maybe that is the play for Pete Alonso. Maybe that's the play for Boras to get some of the money back. Maybe Toronto will give him $30 million a year. But I ask you this, and I ask anybody this when they're represented by an agent. Is that going to make you the happiest, Pete? Don't you really want to play for the Mets? Don't you really want to break Strawberry's home run record? Don't you really want your number up on the facade out in left field? Don't you? What becomes of you when you play for Toronto? They have not won a playoff series in 9 years. 9 years. And that's your pivot. He is long going to rue the day he said, nah, I'm good, to 7 years, 158. Will he top the Mets 3 years, 68, 70 million? I think he will. But at what price? But please don't tell me the Mets should stretch a little bit more for Pete Alonso. He didn't stretch a little bit less for the Mets. He didn't. And it's not like he's asking for 3 years, 75. He probably wants over $30 million. And he probably wants opt-outs after each of the first 2 years. Loyalty goes both ways, everybody. Really does. Goes both ways. So I'm not going to kill the Mets on this one. We'll talk to John Heyman at 1:30, see what info he has. But I will tell you this. On the flip side, if the Mets pivot is Jesse Winker, who has reportedly signed a $7.5 million one-year deal that could go up to $9 million. Nice player. Really good numbers with the Nationals. Really not great numbers with the Mets in the second half, but outstanding numbers in the postseason. If the Mets pivot is Winker, and then a combination thereof of moving Vientos to first, and maybe having Beatty try another time at third, or Mauricio or Acuna, I don't think that's enough. Have you really improved by getting Soto and taking away Alonso and not bringing in somebody big time? Now, I know everybody wants to give their kids a chance, and that's pretty much the working framework that David Stearns uses. Supplement with youth, bring up people through the minors, get a bargain here or there, make the big expenditure. And in truth be told, and I said this yesterday talking with Buster Only, I truly believe that if left to their own devices, there is no way, I repeat, no way, that David Stearns or Brian Cashman with the Yankees were willing to give Soto the money that he got. And you know why? Because that's an owner's contract. That's an ego contract. And that's a legacy contract. That might not be a great contract for the long term. But for the right now, when you're a $68 million a 68-year-old billionaire, you want to make that deal. You want to get that championship if you're Steve Cohen. And Hal Steinbrenner, realizing the value of an all-time star, you stretch more than you wanted to. But GMs don't like those deals. So Cohen probably told Stearns, I'm handling this. And Stearns said, well, I'm handling Alonso. So Alonso doesn't get here. I would think there's got to be more to this. Now, the interesting thing that was brought up by Andy Martino, who was with us the other day, that if the Blue Jays actually sign Pete Alonso, when the Mets would enhance their chances of trading for Vlad Guerrero. And Guerrero said, well, not necessarily, because the word out of Toronto is that if Pete Alonso becomes a first baseman, Vlad Guerrero would shift to third, where he wants to play, where he started, where he's more comfortable. He switched to third because of a logjam. Or he switched to first because of a logjam. He switched away from third because of that. He'd gladly go back. And you know what? Last year of his contract, I think third basemen make more money than first basemen.